us. We have UCI Law's Executive Director of Community Programs, and until last summer, he was also Director of Admissions, so very knowledgeable man. He's also very good at advocating for first generation and low income and underrepresented students who are in need of access to education, and also helps in the transitioning process for college community students to law education. So please welcome Mr. Estuardo Ponciano today, and I will turn the presentation over to him.
Thank you, Christine. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. So yes, let me set up my screen. Give me 1 second. Here we are. And, all right. So thank you for having me. Thank you all for being here. I know it's a Friday afternoon, and there's probably a lot of other things that you could be doing right now. So I appreciate you taking the time to be here. Today we're going to be talking about applying to law school, and preparing to apply to law school, talking about deadlines, timelines, the personal statements, things that you will need to do to prepare. And so I'm going to, this is going to feel a little bit dense maybe, and by all means, as Christine mentioned, please, I'm going to reserve time for questions at the end. But if you have any other questions later, you know, I have my email up in the slides at the end. You can certainly email me directly. You can also, if you would like a copy of this PowerPoint, I'm happy to share that with you. My goal today is to give you the information that you need. So as a way of a quick introduction, again, my name is Estuardo Ponciano. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am the Executive Director of Community Programs at UCI Law School. What that means essentially is that I work on several pipeline programs that the law school has to help students get to law school. And I am a first-gen college grad, law school grad. I identify as a Latinx male. I identify as a gay Latinx male. And so you might be wondering why I'm sharing all this biography, some of these details about myself. And the reason I'm doing that, and it is very much related to the application process. I'm introducing myself so that you understand where I'm coming from, what my experience has been in life, maybe that you might be able to gauge or garner from what I've told you. And the reason that is relevant is because I want you to see that your applications to law school, that's essentially what you're doing, is you're introducing yourself to essentially to the legal community, right? Your applications to law school are your first step into the legal community. And so this is your introduction to them. And so you get to decide how you introduce yourself. You get to decide to share your life story, your identity, your values, your passions to the community by way of your application. And so when you are looking at your application materials, you want to think of them through that lens, that this is your introduction into the legal community. So let's get started. So before we even start talking about applying to law school, you want to be thinking about some things before you start that process. Why do you want to go to law school? Now, this is important for two reasons for you to understand. It's important to understand why you want to go to law school, both because it's a big decision and it's a big investment of your time and money. And you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing. This is a career path. This isn't just like a job that you're applying to. This is a career path that you're going to be embarking upon. And so you want to make sure that you understand those reasons. The second reason you want to be thinking about why you're going to law school is that this should be a part of your application in some way. Your personal statements, the things that you are presenting, you should be doing those or submitting those with that in mind. And so even if the personal statement is very general and just says, tell us about yourself, share something about yourself, the reality is that all of that is true, that's what they want to hear, the law schools want to hear, but they want to hear about it from the lens of, how is this related to why you're coming to law school? Like, what have these experiences, what have you done? What led you to decide that you're coming to law school? So you want to be able to answer that question in some way in your statements. And so it's important to start thinking about that. You also want to be thinking about what you're looking to get out of your law school experience. You want to understand what your goals are, not just for while you're in law school, but after that. Keep in mind that law school is a step in the journey. A lot of times we tend to think of it as an end goal in and of itself. I want to get into UCI law, or I want to get into Harvard or Stanford or wherever. That is just the first step. Law school is your introduction into the legal profession. So you want to be thinking beyond those first 3 years to what you will do after that. What are your goals after law school? And that should inform the decisions you're making about your applications, where you're applying, etc. And finally, you want to be thinking about what do you have to offer the law schools to which you will be applying. You want to understand what value you're bringing to them, because if you understand the value that you're bringing to the law schools, then you will understand what it is that you will have to share, and you will be able to present that in the best way possible so that the law schools want to admit you and want to invite you to their communities. So why go to law school? There's a lot of good reasons. We list some of these here, but there are some reasons that may not be the best reason to go to law school. You know, sometimes we're thinking about the salary, the income, and there's nothing wrong with that. We want to make sure that we're able to pay our bills, that we're able to support our family, that we're able to prosper, right? That's the dream. And so there's certainly nothing wrong with taking salary and money into account in your decision making. However, you want to make sure, is that the primary reason that I'm going to law school? And if it is, you want to think about, are there other things that I could be doing instead that would allow me to make that money, that would not cost me 3 years of my life in law school, that would not cost me, you know, $100,000, $200,000 in law school debt possibly, right? And so you want to think about, am I going to law school because this is something that I want to pursue? Some of these other reasons that I have listed here, as well as the salary, or is the salary the primary motivation? Because if that is, then you really want to look into what that looks like. A lot of times we hear and we see headlines that, you know, starting salaries for lawyers, for attorneys out of law school are X amount, and sometimes they're in the 6 digits, and we think, wow, that's great. But you have to really do your research and look at what that means. What percentage of the starting attorneys are making that money? The reality is that it's a small percentage of the biggest law firms in the world that pay that, and the rest of them do not pay as highly. And so if I am not able to get one of those jobs that pays these 6-figure salaries right out of law school, am I going to be happy, or am I going to feel like I wasted my time in law school? And so you really want to be aware of the decisions and what's guiding your decisions. So what are you looking to get out of your law school experience, right? There's a lot of really good things that we can get out of law school. Our education that will prepare us for the bar and that will prepare us to practice. Job connections, right? Our goal is to work after law school. And so we want to make sure that we're getting, that we're able to secure employment after that. Law schools don't give you a job. They don't get you a job after law school. They help you, but it's still on us. But we want to see, how successful has the law school that I'm looking at been at finding people or finding their students or helping them get into the positions that I would like to do. It's not very helpful for me if a law school is very well ranked, if the types of jobs that I want are not the types of jobs that they help students in. And so you want to be understanding of that before you pick a school or before you decide. Understand what is it that you want to get out of your experience. Obviously, financial aid, scholarships, the environment, diversity, those are all things that you need to be thinking about, because they are things that will affect your law school experience. So finally, the third question was, what do you have to offer the law schools to which you're applying to? Now, it's important to understand what exactly are the minimum requirements that law schools have in order for you to attend. For an ABA law school, which is what hopefully everyone at UCI is looking at, is ABA meaning the American Bar Association. So a school that is approved by the ABA allows students, a law school that is approved by the ABA, graduating from such a school will allow you to take the bar exam in all 50 states. There are other schools in California that are California accredited, meaning that the state of California accredits them. That means that you can only sit for the bar in California. So you want to make sure that you are looking at ABA schools, because those are the schools that will give you the most options. So the minimum requirements for an ABA school are going to be a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution like UCI, and a valid entrance exam score, whether that's the LSAT, which is for every law school, and then GRE, which are some law schools are now starting to take, including UCI. You can look at the median LSAT scores, the median GPAs of the incoming classes that a school posts, right? Schools make this information available. It's publicly available on their websites. It's actually required by the ABA that we make that available, so it's very easy to find. And so you can look at those to gauge where you are, to kind of compare yourself to where the average incoming student was for that class. That doesn't mean that you have to use that as some kind of cutoff, because they are not. Those are not requirements. The school does not require you to have a minimum LSAT or a minimum GPA. They just require you to have a GPA and to have an LSAT score. And there will be other factors, which we'll talk about in a sec, that the school will also use. Rankings, similarly. We all are familiar with the US News and World Report rankings. Those can be useful, but you want to not rely on them exclusively, because rankings are based on very specific metrics. And it would be helpful if you look into those metrics to understand where do they coincide with what is important to you. If a school is very well ranked for something that is not relevant to what you want to do, then again, that is not going to be very helpful for you in your career. So you want to make sure that, yes, you can look at rankings, you can use them, but don't rely on them exclusively, because they may not align with what your career interests are. So as I mentioned, there are things that schools are looking at. Schools conduct what you can call a holistic review, meaning that they are going to look at your entire application. A lot of times there's this idea or this myth that schools are only looking at your LSAT score and your GPA. That is not true. Those are very important numbers. And so you want to do your best in school, you want to do your best on the LSAT, but those are not the only things that a school is looking at. Essentially, law schools are trying to answer two questions. The first is, can this person do the work? Can you do the work that law school requires? Law school is hard, even for students that are, that are great undergrad students that have a lot of research experience. It is hard because it is different than the type of work you've done as an undergrad. So law schools want to be reassured through your application materials that you can handle the workload. The second question they're trying to answer is, why do we want you? Why would we want this person in our class? And so those can be divided, and they try to answer those through these things that I've listed here. The first list are what we typically would refer to as, quote unquote, the hard factors. The LSAT score or GRE score, the GPA. The GPA is comprised of your undergrad grades, but if you have graduate work, we want to see those as well. Character and fitness issues, and addenda. What the character and fitness issues are questions related to your academic conduct, your character, or if there has been any criminal conduct. So if you've been arrested or anything like that, you are required to answer questions about those things. And so those are the hard factors, because those are things that are not movable. We cannot, like LSAT score, it is what it is, right? It's a number. The GPA is a number. Those things you can't really shift them around. You can't they're objective, basically. Same thing with the character of fitness. You either have things that you need to report and explain in your application, or you don't. And the addenda, similarly, those are going to be used to explain. An addendum is basically an explanation for any of these factors that you feel requires an explanation beyond what is, available. And so we welcome those types of addenda. But like I said, those are things that, again, you have to include. You have to include those explanations. The other list, in terms of why we want you, are what we often think of as the soft factors, quote unquote. And that's because those are things that are not measurable. They are subjective, right? And those can include your personal statement, your diversity statement, if you choose to write one, your letters of recommendation, your resume. If a school conducts interviews, then that would be a part of that. And your engagement with the school. If you've been very involved in seeking out the school, have attended events or something like that, then that's something that a school might consider. Again, those are soft factors because they are not they're subjective, right? We can't, there's no number, there's no numerical value to them. It's just something that either, you know, it speaks to the school or it doesn't. So first things first, in terms of a timeline, let's start thinking about what are the things you should be doing or will start to do as you prepare, get ready to prepare for law school. Probably the first thing you should be doing is registering with the Law School Admission Council. That's LSAC. LSAC basically runs the application process for every ABA law school in the country. The LSAC runs the LSAT, the Law School Admission Test, as well. And so if you are applying to law school, you're going to have to create an account with LSAC, register with them. You will be taking the LSAT, you'll register with them for that. And when you submit your applications, that actually all of your law school applications to ABA law schools will come through LSAC. They are basically a clearinghouse for all of us. I mentioned here that you should check yes to inclusion in CRS. CRS is Candidate Referral Service. What that means is that when you take the LSAT, when you've registered with LSAC, they will ask you, there will be an optional question that asks if you would like to be included in the Candidate Referral Service. The reason we say you should say yes to this is that this is a way for law schools to find out about you based on your profile. Because when you register with LSAC, you'll fill out a form, you'll be answering questions about yourself. Eventually, you will also include your LSAT score there. And law schools that are interested in students with your LSAT range or with, you know, from California or what have you, they will be able to find you at least by you know, they'll be able to contact you by email to reach out and offer you a free application or, you know, or invite you to apply. And so it's worth doing that because you want to make sure that you have access to as many opportunities as possible. And this is one way to become aware of a school that might very well fit your needs that you maybe have not been too familiar with. The second step you should do is to create a folder on your laptop, in your computer, on your email, or an actual physical folder where you can start keeping materials. Start collecting, if you attend a law school fair and you collect brochures or materials, you can keep them in there. Or if it's online, you can kind of start keeping notes and track of things that you're getting from schools. You should also create an email account, a Gmail account, strictly for law school applications. Make sure that, and that way, if you're worried about, for example, with the CRS, like that you're gonna be bombarded with too many emails or something, if they are in a separate email account that is only for law school materials, then you don't have to worry about getting your email overrun with law school materials. Make sure when you do that, that you use a professional name, because this is the email address that you're going to be using to communicate with the law schools. And you want to make sure that you keep up to date with that email account, that you're checking it, because schools will be reaching out to you, even, like I said, both initially, but later on when you apply to law school. That's often how law schools get in touch with you. So make sure that you're checking your email. You also want to create your applications 2020 spreadsheet. So your spreadsheet is going to be, you want to create a spreadsheet that allows you to keep track of your application process. And I'm going to exit out of the presentation for a moment because I want to share with you an example of a template. And so I think you can see that. Let me try to open it up all the way. So you want to create a template that allows you to keep track of all of your applications. As an example, I put in UCI as the first one. So you want to know things like, is there an early decision program? Is there a deadline for that? When is the regular application deadline? Is there a scholarship application? Is there a deadline for that? Questions about the personal statements. Letters of recommendation. Who's my first recommender? Who's the second recommender? You know, when did I request the letter? Have I received it? You want to be able to keep track of your application materials. And so creating a spreadsheet with all of that information that you go fill in is going to help you keep organized. Because on average, students are applying to you know, anywhere from 8 to 10 schools and sometimes more. And so you want to make sure that you are that you are keeping up with with all of your application materials, that you know what is going on.
Mr. Ponciano, excuse me.
Yes.
Sorry, we couldn't see the folder if you were opening the folder.
Oh, you weren't able to see the spreadsheet?
No, I think you have to share the screen specifically to that website.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So my
Yeah.
apologies. I don't know. I don't want to get
Sorry.
thrown off. No, no, no. What I can do is, if you will email me, I will, if like for all of you that are watching, if you will email me after this, I will send you a copy of that template, so you have a sense of what I'm talking about. So I apologize for that. And I don't want to try to do it and end up messing it, you know.
We didn't inform Mr. Ponciano how to use all of these webinar tools, so that's our mistake. So don't worry
No,
about
that's totally fine. Because I should have, maybe I should have included it here in the presentation, so I wouldn't have to exit out.
But thank you for
But yes.
explaining. For all the students who are worried about not being able to access it, don't worry. We'll email Mr. Ponciano for it, and then we could send out a mass email with all the resources to all of you after the session.
We'll do that. Yes.
So thank you for all the people who mentioned that too, that you can't see the folder.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for letting me know that you couldn't see it. My apologies for that. So yeah, so what you want to have a spreadsheet, like I said, that will allow you to keep track of your application materials. And like I said, I will send a copy of that out so that you all can see what I'm talking about. And certainly you should modify that. That's going to be a template that I'm sending out to you, but you should modify it with the information that's relevant to you in your applications. You should also be thinking about beginning your LSAT prep and GRE prep. If you're taking the GRE, you want to start getting ready for that. Typically, I would encourage you to be taking that, the earlier the better. Get ready for it. Keep in mind that LSAT prep takes 2 to 3 months on average, and so you want to give yourself enough time to do that. And finally, if you're still in school, then you want to keep working hard at your grades. Remember that grades are an important part. The GPA is going to be an important part of the application, as is the LSAT score. And so you want to make sure that you keep hustling, that you keep working hard at your classes. So you should be creating a timeline for yourself. So thinking about when you want to start law school. Let's say that you want to start law school in September of 2021, right? Then the previous September to October to the end of December is when you should be filling out and submitting your applications. So basically a year in advance. You should also be attending law school open houses, the LSAC forums that are local. We have an LSAC forum in LA every year, or any law fairs like the law fair that UCI hosts. So you just want to get an opportunity to get to engage with the law schools and get more information so that you can make informed choices again about where you apply. As you get closer to the holidays during that, that fall term, you want to ask for practical presents. You want to be asking for things like airline miles, hotel points, gift cards for Starbucks or other places like restaurants. And there's a reason for that. Those will come in handy for you in the spring, and we'll talk about that in a second. The LSAT, at this point, ideally, it should be behind you. You should have taken the LSAT maybe in the summer or in the previous spring. So that, again, over a year from when you want to start law school, so that you are in the best place to apply to law school in the fall. You should be submitting applications September, October, November at the latest. So as you get into the winter, into the new year, you want to start filling out scholarship applications if there are any that you need to fill out for law school. Some law schools have applications, some don't. Some include scholarship consideration as part of your admission, so you don't need to fill out an application, but some do. So you want to become informed about that and fill out those applications. You want to fill out the FAFSA because even if you won't be getting grants for grad school, you might be borrowing. You might be taking out federal loans. And so you want to fill out the FAFSA so that you can do that. Some law schools also offer need-based scholarships or grants, and you will need to fill out the FAFSA to be eligible for those as well. This may require your parents' assistance or their tax return. So make sure that if you are home for the holidays or anything like that, that you ask your parents for these materials so that you have them and you're able to have them with you when you are preparing your applications. You also want to start looking into travel stipends. Law schools will frequently offer travel stipends to students that they have admitted so that you can come visit during the spring. This is why I mentioned that you want to be asking for airline miles, for hotel points, so that you can use those when you are visiting law schools. You definitely want to be planning to visit law schools that have accepted you. You want to attend their admitted student weekend or admitted student events. Do not bail on this. This is something that might seem like, oh, I don't really need to go to that. But it's really important for you to get a sense of what the community is like before you commit to attending a school. And these will be happening in the spring. Once you get to April, in most cases, you're going to have to make a decision about which law school you're going to attend. So you're going to have to pay a seat deposit in some cases. And at that point, you might start looking for housing in the area if you're going to a school that's away from home. What you want to be thinking about, do you want to go to law school versus do you want to go to, for example, UCI Law? Those are very different schools. Sometimes we decide that we really want to go to our top choice school and things are not working out the way we want to, either because we are on the wait list or we were not admitted, or even if we were admitted, maybe we didn't get the kind of scholarship that we need or that we would like to have. So you really want to be thinking about, is my ultimate goal to go to law school or is it to go to this one school? Because you will have to be flexible and realistic and choose in a way that it works for you. Other things that you want to be considerate of are your scholarship money. Again, there might be better opportunities in terms of scholarship at other schools than maybe what your dream school's offering you. And so you have to be open and think about that. That doesn't mean you have to forego the school that you really wanted to go to, but you at the very least should consider how the scholarship can impact your abilities to pursue your goals after graduation. And related to that, you want to be thinking about, what are the opportunities that I will have available to me after graduation? What is it that I want to do? And how is this school going to get me there? Or help to get me there? Finally, as you get closer to the summer or you get into the summer, you need to start preparing to move. You need to start, or actually moving to the location if you're going out of state. Whether you're moving or not, you still have to start planning for money. And that's something you'll need to speak with your parents, with your partner, and with yourself, obviously. You need to plan for the money that you will need to use when school starts, whether it's for housing deposits or furniture or books or transportation. Maybe you're going to need to get a car if you're commuting from your parents' home or something like that. So you need to plan accordingly. This is something that should be on your radar so that it doesn't just sneak up on you a month before school starts. Keep in mind that even if you are going to be borrowed, which most people do, I had student loans when I was from law school. And so there's certainly nothing wrong with the fact that you might be using student loans. Most students, because of the cost of law school these days, realistically, most students are using some type of loan. But even if that's the case, and if you have scholarships, loans, whatever, to pay for school, the reality is that that money is not available until you actually start school. And so you need to plan for before that, so that when you get to school on your first day, you are able to move in, you're able to have food, that you're not like sleeping in your car up until the first day that you get your check or something. That's not the best way to start law school. So once you found the programs that you like and that you should apply, right? What is the worst case scenario in that? The worst case scenario is that you will not be admitted, which is not fun necessarily. Most of us don't like rejection, but think about it. If you want to pursue the schools that are of interest to you, and if you're not admitted, then at least now you know, right? You also want to think outside the box in terms of the schools that you're looking at. As I mentioned, you might be hearing from schools that you had never really considered through the CRS, or you might run into someone at a table at a law fair and say, oh, wow, I had never really thought about going to out of state or going to this particular state. So think about that. Think about the opportunities that might be available to you elsewhere. What if a school is offering you like a really good scholarship to go there, but it's out of state and you hadn't really considered that? That's something that you need to be aware of and that you need to be at least open to opportunities that might help you succeed. You want to get to know the admissions folks. They're there to help you. They're there to answer your questions. That's their job. Admissions works with students that are applying to law school. That's literally our job. And so you are not interrupting, you're not bothering people when you call those offices. If at all possible, visit the schools. Start visiting the local schools while you're, because there's no reason not to at least once this pandemic is over and we can do that. At the same time, you want to go big, you want to apply for your dream schools, but you also have to be realistic. You will have to mix it up with your applications. You can have your dream schools. You should also have schools that you're competitive for. What I mean by competitive, it means that based on your LSAT score, based on your GPA, based on the median LSAT score and median GPA of that school, that you have a reasonable chance of being admitted, right? It's never guaranteed, but certainly you think, okay, I have a pretty good shot. Maybe I'm a point or two away from the median, or maybe I'm at the median. I have a good shot. That would be a school that I'm competitive for. And then safety schools. Safety schools are schools that, based on my numbers at least, based on my LSAT score or GPA, I have a good chance of being admitted into. And so you want to have a good mix in your school list of schools, because you want to make sure that you're actually able to be, that you'll be admitted, right? You don't want to end up in a situation where you've only applied to dream schools and you end up not admitted anywhere. At the same time, you also want to only apply to schools that you would really attend. So even amongst your safety schools, there should be schools that you feel comfortable with and that you feel are going to give you a good education and a good chance to set you up for success after graduation. So once you've selected your schools, you're preparing and you're applying early. As the timeline showed, you need to be submitting your applications during the fall. Applying to law school is like another class in terms of the time it takes, so you want to make sure that you account for that. Don't overload yourself with school. You should plan to have some of your time during the week devoted to applying to law school during that fall semester. LSAT prep is also like another class, which is why we don't recommend that you're doing all of it at the same time. You should have done the LSAT before the applications in the fall, in the summer, in the spring, before the application, the fall when you're applying, so that you can split all this stuff up. You want to start talking to your instructors for letters of recommendation. Start getting to understand, reach out to them, ask them for letters, make sure that you're putting it on their calendars early enough so that they have time to write you a good letter and they're not rushing to write something at the last minute. You also want to have more than what you need. So let's say that you think, oh, most schools ask for 2 letters. You probably want to have to ask 3 people for a letter in case someone doesn't follow through. Understand the application process for each school. They're very similar to each other, but there will be differences. We have different deadlines. Sometimes schools have different requirements for letters. Sometimes one school will only accept 1, other schools will accept 3, other schools, make it optional, so you need to know the details for each school. Again, register with LSAC and apply for the fee waiver. LSAC has a really great fee waiver that if you qualify for, you can take the LSAT 2 times for free. And you can also apply to law school essentially for free because they cover the cost of that. And so you want to make sure that you should apply for that. If you get it, like I said, you probably should apply for it when you register so that you know going in before you sign up for the LSAT whether you have to pay for it or not. So some questions to consider. Why do I have to submit my application early? Does it make a difference to do that? Yes, you do, and yes, it does. The reason for that is that law school applications work differently than undergrad applications. Law school applications happen are reviewed and accepted on a rolling basis. We do not wait to the deadline to then start reviewing all the applications. We start reviewing applications as we receive them. So if you apply in the fall, the law school will start reviewing the application when they receive it, and they will make decisions starting in the fall. So if you submit your application in September, October, they might well have a decision by December. And our deadline, for example, is not until March 1st. But in all that time, we have already been making decisions. And so you don't want to be at the tail end applying in January, February, because by then we've already made a lot of offers. The difference between rolling admission is rolling admission means that we start reviewing and making offers, making decisions from the get-go. Early decision is a program that basically means that you apply early to us. You will get an early decision, usually by the end of November or early December. But when you apply through early decision, you have agreed, you are signing a contract essentially when you apply, that if you are admitted, you will withdraw from other law schools, and you are guaranteeing to attend the program. So you really should only apply to early decisions programs that you are 100% sure you would attend, because you are required to withdraw from the others. And we hold you to that. When should I take the LSAT? Like I mentioned, you should be taking it at the earlier the better. So at the spring before, a year and a half almost before you apply to law, before you want to start law school, the summer before you're submitting applications, as early as possible. Is the LSAT really that hard? It's not so much that it's hard, it's just that it needs preparation because you need to practice. It's skills-based, not knowledge-based, which means that you can't cram for the test like you might with a knowledge-based test. You actually have to develop your skills over time, and that requires practice. Typically, we encourage people to apply to prepare for the LSAT 2 to 3 months, and during that time, 15 to 20 hours a week. So the application process, there's 6 basic steps to the application process. The form, the statements, resume, letters, the transcripts, and the LSAT or GRE score. And we're gonna talk about each of these, which is why I'm not spending too much time on there. So the form, you want to read through the application and fill it out early, fill it out completely, provide as much information as possible. Even every single part of the application is important. If there's a question there, it's because it's helpful to the committee in assessing your materials. And so make sure that you're answering everything. Optional is never really optional. If you have the opportunity to provide additional information, to talk more about yourself, you should take advantage of that. Full disclosure is best. If there are questions, some questions like I mentioned earlier, the character and fitness questions, criminal questions, those are questions that are definitely not optional. You have to answer those, and you have to disclose the situation. You want to be honest about that. That often will not, in most cases, it will not disqualify you from admission, but omitting information or not being forthcoming with the details of an arrest or a sanction on campus, all that will lead to is just a delay, because now the committee will have to follow up with you to get more information. And like I said, in most cases, it doesn't affect the application decision. Use the resources available. If you're not sure whether you need to disclose something, if you have any questions about the application, make sure to reach out to the offices and ask. So the personal statements, you want to become aware of the statements in advance in terms of what they're asking. In most cases, they're general, but again, some schools might vary from that. This is the closest that you'll have to an interview. Most schools do not offer an interview. So it's time to shine. It's time to be yourself and talk about yourself. Let us get to know the real you. Why are you coming to law school? What has brought you here? What are the experiences, the training, the motivations, the inspirations for what brought you to this moment that you're ready to start law school? You want to write them with enough time that you can ask others to give you feedback, both on the substance in terms of what you're talking about, but also in terms of the style. And the style, I mean the grammar, that it is well written. The good statements will help you stand out from the crowd if they reflect you and your experiences. We are not looking for an essay about the law or about a topic. And it shouldn't be about someone else either, because it should be about the person that's coming to law school, which is you. A lot of times students worry that that their experience is not different or is very regular, for lack of a better word, right? That's okay. We are not concerned with that. I like to compare it to a bus route, right? If you are going to the beach, let's say, then the bus will start at across from, I forget what it's called, but the bus stop that's across from Chick-fil-A, right? You will start there, you'll get on the bus there with everybody else, and eventually that bus is gonna take you to the beach. Along the way though, there are a lot of different stops, and some people will get on and off this bus for different reasons, and then they'll get back on, and then they'll get back off again, and they'll get back on. Some people get on the bus and don't get off until they get to the beach. Others stop along the way for whatever reason. And that's what this is like for us. As long as you're getting, the fact that you are at this moment of applying to law school means that you made it to the beach. Regardless of how many stops you had along the way, we're perfectly happy that you've made it to the beach. And so don't worry about, you know, whether or not you had a straight shot to the beach or whether you stopped and started. That's perfectly fine with us. Don't sell yourself short. We value the uniqueness that you're bringing, whatever your life experiences, whatever your educational experiences, professional experiences, we value all of that. At the same time, even though we value your uniqueness, you have to remember, don't get cute. You have to remember that this is a professional program you're applying to. So don't submit something like a poem for your personal statement or a short story for your personal statement. It needs to be about you. It is usually you're being asked to write a statement, which is an essay. So write what we ask you to write. Follow the guidelines that you are provided regarding format. If they give you a word limit, follow it. If they give you a page limit, follow it. You want to make sure that you are showing that you know how to follow directions and that you read them and that you care about following directions, because law is all about rules. Diversity statements. Some people wonder if diversity statements are necessary. These are always optional, but they can be helpful to the committee. A diversity statement should add something different to your application, and it should not just repeat what you've already said in a personal statement, for example. So you want to be thinking about that. What should I talk about? You know, if perhaps you want to talk about how your background, how your identity has affected your educational and professional opportunities. Or perhaps you want to talk about how will this impact your work moving forward and how will it impact the profession. These are just ideas, like I said, but that go beyond just, you know, not just, you know, the fact that of your identity or the, you know, but going beyond that you're being thoughtful about it. What if I've already discussed my diverse background in my personal statement? That'll be a judgment call as to whether you still need to write a diversity statement. But you might consider a different aspect of your background, like you know, this is where intersectionality would come into play that you haven't already discussed, or perhaps discuss it in a different context. Your resume. A good resume is going to work hand in hand with your transcripts and with your GPA. It is going to illuminate for the admissions committee what you've been doing while you were in school. And so they can see, oh, while you were in school, while you were getting those straight A's or those B's or whatever you had, whatever was going on your transcript, they can see, oh, at the same time, this person was also doing these other things that were also adding value to their life. And so you want to be, your resume should reflect those experiences, whether they're paid or not, whether they're volunteering, whether they're leadership, whether you were involved on campus, whether you were working, whatever you were doing, that's what should be on your resume. There is no right job or perfect job that you should have had before coming to law school. We are not only looking for legal assistants, paralegals. If you have legal experience, that's great. But if you don't, that is perfectly okay too. We do not require any kind of legal experience to come to law school. Include all of your experience, even the things that you don't think are related to law. For example, like if you were waiting tables, if you were working at Target or Starbucks, you should include that, because it's not about the job, it's about the fact that you were working and the fact that you were maybe putting yourself through school, helping to pay your bills, helping to support a family. That is what the point of the resume is. Unless a school tells you that they have a page limit for the resume, don't worry about a page limit, because this is very different from a job application. Your letters of recommendation. The most helpful letters will be from people who know your academic work and your skills. Remember, all of these materials are working together to convince, as evidence, to convince the committee that you can do the work. And so letters of recommendation should be doing that, which is why people that know your academic work, your skills, are the ones that are going to write the best letters. An employer can also write a good letter for you if they can keep it within those realms. Like, what type of work did you do for them? What skills did you develop? What skills did you improve? What attributes did they see that were helpful? It's not just a reference letter that tells us that you are very nice and that you're fun to be around. Like, that's nice. We want you to be nice and fun, but that's not helpful in terms of making a good case or argument on your behalf. Find out how many letters each school requires and make sure you have enough of them. Your transcripts. Schools look at your entire transcript, not just your GPA. LSAC is going to calculate your cumulative, meaning your total GPA, and this will be your official GPA. So sometimes you see students are kind of surprised because they might have taken classes at a community college, or they transferred in from a community college, and they have one GPA, which is UCI's GPA, which is only based on your work at UCI. And then when they apply to law school and they submit their transcripts to the Law School Admission Council, they find out that, oh, my GPA is different because now they're counting in the GPA the work from community college. And so be aware that your GPA that will be reported to law schools will be based on all of your work that goes towards your bachelor's and not just what's at UCI. Schools are looking at your individual academic journey. They're looking at your entire journey, at your transcript, not just at your grades, not just at your GPA number. But if there are discrepancies, if there are things that you're concerned about, gaps, etc., you should address those in an addendum, as we discussed a moment ago. Finally, the entrance exams. A valid score for both LSAT and GRE is one that you earned within the last 5 years. The highest score is going to be your official score. So if you take this test more than once, there's no penalty. Be aware of deadlines in terms of when you have to register for the test, when you have to take it, any policies, etc. Because not being aware of those will not be an excuse in terms of the application. Preparation is the best way to approach the test through practice. Preparation equals practice. Typically, like I said, 2 to 3 months, 15 to 20 hours a week during that time. Don't sign up and take the test just to see how you'll do. If you want to try and do a practice test, do a real practice test. Because if you take the test, it'll be scored and that score counts. Numbers are only, and remember, as important as these are, numbers are only a part of your story. So don't stress out too much about that. So once you've been admitted, how do you choose the school that is right for you? You want to be looking at these different things: scholarship, financial aid, the cost of attendance, the job prospects. Those are things that are important that you should be considering. Financial aid. Think outside the box again. There might be schools that are offering you really good scholarship opportunities and you want to at least consider them if that will help you in the long run. Weigh the trade-offs of going to school locally versus out of state in terms of the costs. The same goes for privates versus public. Sometimes private schools have more discretionary money that they can spend on scholarship than public schools do. If you end up on a wait list, keep in mind that the purpose of the wait list is to fill the class. So sometimes there may be a situation where the school does not offer anyone an admission from the wait list. It's not because you are not worthy of it. It's simply because they don't have the need for it. To express your interest in being admitted from the waitlist, you just submit an email, follow whatever instructions the school's giving you. Be aware that if you're admitted from the waitlist, you might have to make a very quick decision, especially if it's getting closer to orientation. And if you have questions, talk to the schools. And finally, ask questions. Admissions people want to hear from you. Talk to professors, current law students, attorneys, law professors. Law school websites are the first place to go. If you don't know, I didn't know any attorneys before I went to law school. So if you don't know anyone, contact the law schools and they'll get you in touch with law students, with professors, to answer your questions. So now we can turn to answer questions. So let me see. So on the Q&A we have, are there study tips you can share for the LSAT? So probably the best one that I can share is the Khan Academy, which is K-A-H-A-N, or you might be aware of them already. So Khan Academy has a partnership with the Law School Admission Council where they have prepared a whole test prep program. And the best part of that is that it is free. And so I would encourage you to go to LSAC's website and find the Khan Academy LSAT prep. Because it is personalized to each student. So when you answer questions, you're not answering random questions. It's rather based on how you answered a previous question, they will then follow up to make sure that you're really learning the material and practicing the way you need to practice. The other tip really quickly is just, you need to practice. There's no shortcut around it. And when I say practice, I mean active practice. You need to actually write down the answers, score yourself, time yourself, because that is how you're going to improve. If you're just kind of sitting there with the book leafing through things, that's not going to be very helpful because that's not how you take the test. You want it to be like you take the test. The other question, second question, do law schools look holistically at your grades? If you had a different major, for example, and then that major didn't get the best grades, And yes. So essentially, we will look at the whole transcript. And so we can see that, oh, this person had a rocky start. They started at a major that was not the best major, but for them, that they switched and they brought up their grades. So yes, we look at your entire transcript, not just at your GPA. Is it recommended to report your race, ethnicity on the applications? Yes. I don't think that there's any, we don't use that. We are actually in California and pretty much in most states now, we are not allowed to use that for purposes of making an admission decision. But it can inform, and it can be something that we consider in terms of, you know, what opportunities did this person have available to them? Did they have available? And that's something that you can also address in other statements, like a diversity statement. So it's, if anything, it is used for statistical information, meaning that we want to know like what our class composition looks like every year, and that is how we will use that information. But certainly, if you want to talk about it in a diversity statement or in other ways, you can do that also. How early can I take the LSAT? The LSAT is good. The LSAT score is good for 5 years, so you can take it pretty early, you know, and then just have the score ready and waiting for you when you decide to apply to law school. Is taking it in spring of sophomore year too early, or fall junior? Nope, not at all. It is totally fine. So how often do students get big scholarships for rights to law school? It's not going to be a majority. You know, I think at most schools, I would say a full scholarship is going to be very small. Maybe 10% of the class is going to get a full scholarship. Most schools, and especially at UCI, for example, we actually very rarely offer, we haven't offered a full ride in years. And when you say full ride, like that also can depend. A public school like UCI, the most we can ever offer is tuition. So we would never give you like a housing stipend. We would never give you anything like that. And so whereas a private school might. So the best way to find that out is to go through LSAC. They have a law school directory where you can find information for every single law school in the country, and you can get that specific information to see what's offered. Is it true that earning an A+ in a course will boost your LSAT GPA? Should we compare? So there's actually a grade calculator on LSAC's website. And so you can go to them and kind of type in things and figure out what your LSAC GPA is and see how different it is. If you only have grades at UCI, then your grade GPAs are probably going to be pretty similar. It's not going to change very much. I'm not aware that by taking an A+, getting an A+, it will boost the GPA. It simply is, what happens sometimes is that not all schools grade everyone with a A+. And so the highest grade you could get at some schools would be an A. And in which case, what they do is that they try to convert that so that when the schools look at someone's application, we can see how they do in relation to other applicants from around the country. Because it wouldn't be fair, for example, to say, oh, this person has a 4.4 because their school had A+, and the other person only has a 4.0 because their school didn't. And so they kind of try to convert it so that it's even across the board. But you can find that calculator to kind of figure that out for yourself. Any tips that I wish I would have gotten when making connections is just be honest about your experience, honest about where you are. In terms of if you want to make connections with attorneys, attend events, you know, attorneys, and reach out, go to the law school website, see what events we're having. Obviously this will be after the pandemic when we can get together in person, but most of our events are public, open to undergrads, open to everyone. You'll meet attorneys there. That's a great way to network and start asking people questions. Try to reach out to the admissions office if you're trying to find students. Sometimes you'll find students through other venues, and ask them questions and say, hey, I'm thinking about law school. You know, I would love to hear about your experience, about your recommendations. People are happy to answer questions and happy to help you, but you need to take the first step. Are there people, counselors we can meet with to get assistance with planning out a schedule? Yes, you can email me and I will be happy to set up an appointment so we can do that. So we can to create a timeline for you. A gap year, I'm just checking the time to make sure we're not over. Okay. Gap year, yes, you should come to law school when it is right for you. We don't have a requirement that you have to come straight through. It's really, the gap year should really be a time for you to do what you need to do, whether it's work and save money or rest or prepare for the LSAT or, you know, what have you. it's really your call. There's no right or wrong answer. Like we you know, a lot of students take time off between undergrad and college and law school, so that's perfectly fine. We don't have a preference. We don't give points to undergrads from UCI, other than the fact that we recognize that UCI is a really good institution and that to do well there, you have to have been a really good student. And so in that way, you know, we assess you, but we don't have like seats that unfortunately, we can't reserve seats for undergrads from UCI or anything like that. Are there any readiness programs that can help me prepare for law school that you're aware of? So there's a program like the pre-law outreach program that UCI runs that happens every summer. You can find information about that. It's pre-law outreach program. You can Google just pre-law and UCI Law, and you'll find the website. There's also a program at UCLA Law, that's the UCLA Law Fellows. There's the Munger Tolles Fellows program, which is run by the law firm Munger Tolles and Olson. There's a lot of different programs. So if you Google pre-law, or if you go to LSAC, you'll find lists of these types of programs and how you can apply for them and get into them. How is the first year program organized at UCLA Law? The first year is going to be pretty much the way is all of your required courses. You don't get to choose your classes during the first year. They're all assigned to you because they're all of your required classes. You're going to be one of those classes is going to have you working with clients, because UCI Law is very practice oriented, and so the curriculum incorporates working with clients directly. But otherwise, the classes are going to be pretty on par with what you would take as a first year anywhere, because like I said, they're all of your required courses. How do you find out if you'd like law school? Come and sit in on a law school class and see what that's like. Go volunteer, at a law office, or talk to law students. That's the best way to find out. LSAT prep, would I recommend? I don't have a recommendation. I think talking to them, seeing what they offer, and seeing what what will be the best for you. I don't endorse any of them. They're all good if you do the work. And if it's going to graduate school, I think if there is something you want to do with your law degree that also would incorporate the graduate program, then yes. But otherwise, if your plan is primarily to practice law as an attorney, I don't know that you necessarily need another graduate degree. So that would be something that you want to think about and talk to, because it depends also on the program. And so it would be good to come and talk to us, to the admissions office, and kind of find out and see what they think, and talk to advisors, talk to attorneys that are doing what you would like to do after law school. So for undocumented students, we also have scholarships that are funded by the state. So certainly you are still able to receive scholarships from the law school. That is not a problem. In the same way that you can get them at UCI as an undergrad, you can also get them at the law school. Social media accounts. The accounts don't hurt you just want to be mindful of what's on them. If you think that there's anything that's questionable, you want to scrub them, and you want to make sure that there will be people that will look up your application sometimes in the admissions office when reviewing your application, will look up your social media. Be aware that anything that's up is public, and so you should be thoughtful about what you post and what is public. What should you ask at admissions fairs? The best thing to ask is to introduce yourself, and if you don't have specific questions, then think about what you want to do with your law degree, and then ask the school how do you have programs? Are there things? This is what I'm interested in. Is there a program that can help me at your school with that, or get to do that? It's hard when you come up to a fair and simply say, tell me about your law school, because I can tell you so much about the law school, right? That it's not very helpful. But if you can ask me about something that you're interested in, then I can talk to you about how the law school can help you with that. So be thoughtful about what you're interested in, and then you can kind of start the conversation that way. Or if you have more technical questions like scholarships, things like that, then obviously you can ask those as well. We are all aware. Oh yes, I wanted to address this, so thank you for bringing it up. So COVID-19, we're all very aware of it around the world, obviously, and so certainly we are mindful of that. We are mindful that jobs have been canceled, internships have been canceled. Don't worry that that's going to hurt your applications, because we understand that this affected grades, this affected job opportunities, the LSAT opportunity, all of that. And so I would try to plan accordingly. LSAC is working very quickly and has already worked very quickly to kind of reschedule and recalibrate so that they can offer the test for you, whether you're doing it online on your own or whatever. They're working on that. And so just keep checking out, for the purposes of the LSAT at least, keep checking LSAC and their website, because they are doing what they can to help make sure that you're still able to take the test when you need to. In terms of the other things, just keep working as best as you can. We're fully aware that this has had an impact on education. And so this is not something, and like I said, on the employment sector. So whether it is that your current job, fell through, or your internship fell through or got canceled, we're aware of that. That's not something that will be held against you in any way in the applications.
Excuse me, Mr. Ponciano, everyone. This was a really great presentation. I hope everyone got a lot of good knowledge out of it, because I think this is personally one of the best presentations I've gone to about the law school information, so thank you. But we are a little past 2 p.m., so I know that a lot of people have potentially courses or lecture they have to attend or something else. So we will be bringing it to a close. If you have any other questions, I'm sure that Mr. Ponciano wouldn't mind you emailing him. His email is right there in the middle of the whole thing. So if you want to just screenshot or take a picture of it. And don't worry about the PowerPoint. We'll be emailing Mr. Ponciano about the PowerPoint, and we'll be sending it to you all who attended today. So yes.
Yes, thank you, Christine. Yes, email me the rest of any questions that you think of, or even those that I wasn't able to get to, and I will be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you so much for attending, Mr. Ponciano.
No, you're welcome. Thank you. It was my pleasure. I hope it was helpful.
It was, and I thank you everyone else for attending too, and letting us be able to answer all of your very good questions.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you. Have a good afternoon. And like I said, we'll be in touch. I hope to hear from you if any questions come up. And I will be sending, like I said, Christine and I will be in touch, so I can send out the PowerPoint as well as that template that I was trying to show you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Ponciano. I'll just
You're
stay
welcome.
here in the chat until everyone leaves in case someone has a question. So everyone is free to go. So thank you.
All right. Well, I guess I can answer these last two questions if for people, if they're still here, if that's okay.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So regarding the GPA curve, so like I said, what you want to be looking at is what the median GPA, what the median GPA is, what the median LSAT score is. That gives you a good sense of where the average lies. But keep in mind that all that means, the median, is that half of the class is above that number and half that class is below. So just because it is not a cutoff. And so if you feel like, oh, well, my GPA is just slightly below the median, that's okay, because half of the class was below that number. And so don't worry about your GPA not being exactly at the median. You want to look at, if that's the case for you, then you want to be looking at where your other factors. Make sure that your statements are really well written. Make sure that your letters are strong. That you're asking people for letters, because you may not read them if they're not writing letters, but make sure that you're confident that the person's going to write a good letter for you. Make sure that you are doing what you can on the LSAT, so that everything else kind of balances out if you feel that, oh, well, my GPA is slightly below their median. But again, I wouldn't stress too much about that, because like I said, the median is made up of people both above it and below it. The other question was, would using an addendum to mention some non-ideal circumstances like mental health, for example, explain a gap in education do more harm? Schools are not allowed to use things that you disclose against you, especially for medical reasons. And so I think, disclosing it certainly is not going to be a problem. I think if you're concerned at all that they might still kind of might give pause to the committee, then what I would suggest is make sure that if you're talking about this as something that has affected your grades or something, what you want to present it in such a way as to show that that is no longer a problem for you, and that it has been resolved, and that you have coping skill mechanisms, that you have a support system, so that if you find yourself in a situation where those are triggered for some way, then you want to make sure that that is, you know, that you can handle it, that you have a plan of action, so to speak, in place so that you can proceed and be successful in law school. That is going to be usually what if there is a concern by the committee, then it's going to be that. It's going to be like, what if you get stressed out at law school because it's very stressful? Are you going to not be able to handle it? And so if you can present, yes, this was something that affected me, the upside is that I learned how to manage it. And this is how I manage it now. I have, and whatever it is for you, then you list that. And so it shows that you are proactive and that you understand how to manage your situation. And that will alleviate any concern, while at the same time offering an explanation for maybe a dip in grades or whatever, which is usually why people disclose that information. Do you find that students have a better transition to law school if they were paralegals before? No, not necessarily. I mean, it doesn't hurt to have been a paralegal, but a lot of times the type of work that paralegals do is different than what you would do as an attorney. And what you're being taught to do in law school is to be an attorney. And so it's not necessarily going to give you a leg up in law school. It will, like I said, it won't hurt you to be familiar with that, but certainly it's not something that I would say, oh, you should go out and be a paralegal so you can do better in law school, because the two don't necessarily equate in that way. If you're not quite sure if you want to go to grad school or law school, would it be okay to take a GRE prep class this summer? I think if the GRE prep classes, presumably it's something you're going to pay for. So if you're not sure that you're going to law school or grad school, then I don't know that you necessarily want to pay for that class. Or if what you mean is that you're not sure picking between the two, then yes, I think the GRE is a good option. Be aware, however, that not every law school, in fact, most law schools still don't accept the GRE. And so by taking the GRE, if you decide that you want to go to law school, you're going to be limited to applying to law schools that do take the GRE, which is right now we're on 50 schools, which is a lot, but not all of them. Like not all of them not all the California schools take the GRE. And so you just want to make sure, if you're thinking that law school might be an option for you and you think that you would rather just do the GRE, which is totally understandable, because you might be doing grad school instead, make sure that the schools you're interested in do accept the GRE. And then if they do, like UCI, for example, we're currently accepting it as a trial run for 3 years. We already did it this year, and it'll be accepted for 2 more years. After that, we might continue to do that, but the faculty might decide not to. And so, but for the moment, yes, we do take the GRE. So, and like I said, and some schools are in that similar situation. So you just want to be informed about that so that you don't end up taking the GRE expecting to be able to apply to certain law schools and then you find out that you can't. So yeah, that's it. That was the last question. I think we got to all of them.
Thank you for staying over time to answer the question.
All right.
Okay. We will be in touch, Mr. Ponciano.
Yes, we will. Thank you. Have a nice weekend, everyone. Thank you again.